Hi everyone, welcome back. Thank you for joining me. We're going to look at another White Dwarf. This one, White Dwarf 213, September 1997. This was the last White Dwarf that I got on subscription from my local newsagents. Let's take a look at why I stopped getting it after this. You thought last month's layout was, well, maybe you didn't. I thought last month's layout was confusing and chaotic. Oh, it gets better. You remember back in the day when you had an image on the cover of White Dwarf and you could appreciate the image? Well, no, now you can't. Now you can't, because even the image that's on the cover, which is the Storm of Vengeance 140,000 campaign cover, now you can't see it because it's buried in all of this text, and all of this text has got so many exclamation marks. Exclamation marks, exclamation marks, exclamation marks. And there's even this little picture here shoved on here for some reason, just to make it even more chaotic and harder to see what's going on. This picture of the barricade sticking out across it here. We've moved the Games Workshop logo down so it's overlapping the barcode so that nothing is neat and orderly, and this gun comes over the top of here and it's all very wild and confusing, and it's only going to get worse. Oh, whoever just got into desktop publishing at this point was having an absolute field day with just slapping different fonts and different logos and images over text and all kinds of stuff, and you can't see what's going on, and there's no coherency to any of it, and you've got 4 columns here, but they just about carry on, and here everything's lost, and I hate it. I hate it. I can't look at it. It makes my eyes hurt looking at it. So that's one reason that I stopped. I stopped picking up White Dwarf at this point. Another reason was the look of the miniatures. Paul Muller here, who did the recent Boyle event miniature this year, has done his first sculpts for Games Workshop. Here is the Frateris Militia, and I just feel like they're lacking in something. And even these dwarf miniatures here, they're starting to get that look that I associate very much with 6th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle, where I don't know what it is. Maybe it's partly the painting style. Maybe partly it's the everything getting chunkier. I don't know. I mean, these are Colin Dixon sculpts, and there's nothing wrong with them, but they just don't feel like dwarves to me, and I don't know quite why that is. I can't really explain it, but the aesthetic style is very definitely shifting. Along with obviously the graphic style here. So we've got some more Gorkamorka stuff. This was teased with the trucks and things last issue. We've got a little bit more information here. We've got some of the background to Gorkamorka, the story behind Gorkamorka. So orcs on the way to a big war crash land on a planet. Their Hulk is destroyed. They try and put it back together so that they can take off again and go and join the warg. So you've got boys vying across the plains with each other for picking up scrap and bringing it back to the mechs. And they put together the new Hulk, and they decide, it looks like a great big orc. And the biggest and baddest orcs of them all are, of course, Gorkamorka. So it must be an image of Gork. No, wait, it must be an image of Mork. And then there's a fight over. Yes, it may well be a Catholic sect reference. Who knows? It's quite obscure for Games Workshop if it is, but it has that kind of feel. Anyway, yes, the two rival Gork clans and Mork clans start fighting each other, and they destroy the Hulk again. And so the mechs have to put it back together again, and this time they decide that it's going to be called Gorkamorka to satisfy both, but you've still got all these feral orcs because they love driving and they love fighting, using it as an excuse to drive around in buggies and fight each other and pick up scrap, and that is the game. And it's quite an entertaining game. It wasn't entertaining enough for me to want to stay in the hobby at this point. I think largely that's because I didn't like the aesthetics of the orcs that were coming in, very much an aesthetic driven person, and I thought they looked not fun enough. They looked a bit too serious and toothy for me, so I moved on. I was finding other interests, shall we say, at this point, and the hobby was starting to lose its grip on me, and partly the layout of White Dwarf and partly the models that were coming out were a big part of that. So this is Tyranids in Epic, and again the layout typography is all over the place, and it kind of makes sense, but it's visually it's quite bombarding. It's quite difficult to know where to read next in some of these, and it just gets worse with all these myriad boxes and little text, and there's not even very much to say in these boxes. You know, the text in these boxes largely exists just for text's sake. I feel like all you really need is the picture of the unit and the title of it. Or if you're going to put text in, say something useful about what those units do. Don't just slap in some bland filler text, which is what seems like it's happened here. And this is a good image. This is a great image of Tyranids swarming across the battlefield, but it's somewhat swamped because of this massive board around here, the big colours. You don't really need captions like that. Oh, and it gets worse and worse and worse. This background makes it hard to... You're trying to show off. You're trying to compare here. So this is Warwick's epic 40k army and his 40k army. And if you had these two side by side here, you'd get a really good comparison, and you could write a very brief blurb as to what his army was about. But no, you've got these tiny pictures shoved in. Tiny pictures, so many pictures and such tiny pictures that you can't really appreciate any of them. This is a look at some Dark Angel stuff with Storm of Vengeance coming out. Apologies, just pausing there while the heavy rain moves past. Yeah, some Dark Angel stuff with Storm of Vengeance coming out, and again this nice pictures, but just I just can't read. I mean. So Adrian Woods, his comment here is, I've always admired the Dark Angels. It must be something to do with the green armour. Ha ha, that's an in-joke because, of course, he's known for being the orc guy, which is not true. He was no more an orc guy than anyone else, but, you know, that was the image that was given of him. In particular, though, it's the Deathwing along with the Raven Ring that really characterises the Dark Angels horse. I don't feel like we need to know that. Yeah, there's so much spurious excess text. I feel like this hasn't been edited really. They could edit this right down to just the gist and make each thing actually relevant. It just feels like they're filling up space. Gav Thorpe and Jervis Johnson fight through the Purge scenario from Storm of Vengeance along with the barricades that you got here in the middle of White Dwarf. And this is nice. So this is a nice way of doing it, right? A full page picture of Warwick Kinraid's, really beautifully painted and very different to heavy metal, the previous heavy metal style painting there, with of course the older Land Raiders still in place. And the Grey Knights that weren't really a thing in Warhammer at the time, so it's nice to get a visual on this and a view of the whole landing pad that we've seen bits of previously but not really seen a whole lot of, and the red sky and the green base and the greens and reds here. It all comes together really nice. It's really nice photography, and a simple little box here with Kendall, that's Warwick Kinraid's brother. There you go. Sorry, not Warwick's, but his brother's army, telling us a little bit about why he's picked what he's picked and why he's painted it, how he has. And that's all you need to engage your interest. You don't need these silly little boxes. We've got some more figures that I'm not particularly keen on here. Those chunky Ali Morrison High Elves that were coming out for 5th edition at the time. Just don't. This is like, her waist is insane, and then her head is spindly and huge, and it's really odd proportioning in some of these figures. They feel chunky, but they also feel strangely flimsy, and maybe that's an elfy thing. It's supposed to be weird. I don't know. I spent far too long looking at this picture as a kid, because it says here, test your scouting skills and try and find the hidden Tyranid lictor in this picture. Write in and tell us if you find it. Amberley Kettlewell, you sod. I don't think there is a lictor anywhere in here. I've scrutinised this picture so much, I've even Googled it to see if anyone's found it. So if you found a lictor in this picture, do tell me and put me out of my misery. But I couldn't find a lictor. Maybe I'm just a terrible scout. I thought maybe, one of these cactus spines was actually a posed lictor behind the cactus, or I don't know, it's hidden somewhere. I could not find it. Discussion of use of scouts, and again, this typography, this tiny text that I can't. It makes it really hard to read, and I get they're going after the kind of computer readout stuff, but no, just really difficult to read. And then they do this. You're like, here's a test for you. If you can read this, then decide where you're going to deploy your scouts and how you're going to use your scouts. And based on your answer, you can flip the page round and you read how well you did or how well you didn't. But I don't know, just all feels very difficult to read. Thorskinson's Island. Rick Priestley brings some more stuff for the end of the summer Warhammer campaign, along with accounts of what's been going on in their own studio campaign. Here's those dwarves that we saw earlier. These ones painted by Alan Merritt, who we will all know as the then studio manager. Did many things at White Dwarf, but was then the studio design manager. Painted in this blue and orange kind of combo. Again, works very different. You can see why the heavy metal stuff worked really well in photography, because this stuff doesn't have quite that level of contrast, and it looks very flat and washed out in the photographs. But again, nice to see somebody different from the studio team painting stuff, or the heavy metal team anyway, painting stuff up. Here's another design for some pages. They want you to write some articles for the Citadel Journal, and here's what you might look to include in the Citadel Journal. I never really got into the Citadel Journal, but I have retrospectively found that there are some good stuff in there. Sisters of Battle, you know how I love Sisters of Battle. Here's again another complicated page looking at how Sisters of Battle would undertake their tactics against Chaos, against Eldar, against Orcs. And a battle report of sorts, where this is a 3-in-1 battle report. So this is they're fighting Chaos, then they're fighting Eldar, then they're fighting Orcs. And the colour choices here, I think, works. You know, the black and red, the black and blue, the black and green. And even this is not too bad. You can kind of see what's going on, but it's just hard to read sequentially to try and do a battle report in a page. It feels like too much crammed in too small a space. I think they've gone for this big sort of fat White Dwarf, and then they've crammed in loads of unnecessary text in some places and extended articles, and then made something that could have been twice that length and done really thoroughly into a short space. It just feels like there's not particularly great editorial at this point. And do we even know who the editor is, who to blame for this? I can't even see No, I don't think anyone's putting their hand up for being... I don't know who the editor was at this point. Maybe nobody. Maybe that's why there's an issue. Here's how you can go about entering Games Day and Golden Demon 1997. And then we're at the catalogue pages, which at least are quite clear and easy to... I mean, look, here again. Why shove Shane Hoyle's beautiful painting here? Really nice, really different painting. This should be a double-page spread, or it should be a 4-page heavy metal article looking at the way that Shane's put his army together. Don't shove it as one single page somewhere in the catalogue section. It just makes no sense. But these at least are easy to read. Horrible Space Marine Scouts. Horrible Sisters of Battle. Horrible High Elves. The Undead were alright. Some older Epic 40,000 stuff. Yeah, so you might have gathered not a fan. So there you go. That was my last subscription copy of White Dwarf. I did continue to buy them after this. And just every now and again, when there was a Mordheim article or a Inquisitor article or a Lord of the Rings article, I would pick it up, but I didn't buy it every month. Certainly not subscription, but I've picked up a bunch more since, so we're going to carry on doing this. But what I'm going to do, we're going to revert to a different format. So I'm still going to do the 5-year intervals going forwards. We're going to do an 80s one, and we're going to do a 90s one. So we're going to do 10 years apart. And then we're going to do the one in between. Because this era of White Dwarf now is what I consider to be the golden era. I know lots of people think that when they moved away from role-playing games to tabletop games, that was the end of an era. And it was the end of an era, but it was not the end of an era that I was interested in. The era that I was interested in was this era. So I want to do this mid-90s. So this is 92 onwards. I'm going to do that as a separate video. So that's what we'll do next time. See you then.